Hi, welcome back. So this week we are taking a complete detour from basically everything we've talked about so far in these last 15 episodes because we're totally stepping away from rock and metal. And I'm going to tell you about a completely different genre that I got into along the way. It happened kind of parallel to my rock and metal phase because I mean I've always been a rock and metal musician mostly, but this is something that brought new elements into my music world. So there's a funny story behind it actually. What happened is one day my very good friend and bass player in my band calls me and tells me like, hey, there is this supermarket that is having a music sale. So I'm gonna go and see what they have and maybe snatch a thing or two. Do you wanna come? And I was like, yeah, sure, let's go. So he picked me up and we went there. And it was a large supermarket chain that we had over there. And yeah, they had like a special sale on their music department. Now, honestly, what can you expect from the music department from a grocery store, like a large supermarket? I wasn't really expecting to find much in there. Mostly probably like, pop artists. Like I said, like maybe I can find something from someone that I considered like, okay, yeah, this is cool. I'll take that. Nothing beyond that. But apparently what happened is it seemed like this chain got like a huge batch of tapes that had cosmetic defects on them. Like maybe the case would be slightly cracked or the printing on the labels would be slightly off or something like that. But other than that, the tapes would be perfect. So they were like offering those at a ridiculously low price. It was like no brainer. So me and my friend go through, they had like large containers and they just dumped everything in there. It was just basically find what you can and good luck. Me and my friends started to go through them and I started to pick some up that I thought like, oh wow, what a surprise. I'm definitely gonna buy this. And we just walked through the register with our towers of tapes. But anyway, I'm gonna show you what I got that day because this is where things got really interesting for me. Well, the first thing is I still have all those tapes, but yeah, it's funny. I got this one. This is David Lee Roth, and the album is called Skyscraper. And the reason why I got this is because Steve Vai plays in this record. I mean, Steve Vai was David Lee Roth's guitar player for a while. So for me, it was like, yes, Steve Vai, are you kidding me? Let's go. I also got these. I was less surprised about finding these in there, but I still had like to take them. And I got 3 records from Prince. I love Prince. I've always been a huge fan of everything he does. So for me, these were like, okay, yeah, I am so taking this. And then I found, I was not expecting this at all, ever in a supermarket. It's a band that I had heard about. I had never listened to them, but I knew about them from the guitar magazines that I was reading at the time because they would be splattered all over the place often. And it's Tribal Tech. So I was like, oh, wow, okay. This is unusual. I am going to take them for sure because I don't know when I'm going to be able to find these again. I had never seen them in an actual store, so I just took them with me. And I knew that they were doing not rock, but I had no idea what. So I get home and I decided to listen to them first because it's the band that I didn't know at all. And I started to play the tapes and I was like, what is this? I think I listened to the 3 records. I got 3 throughout the entire day and then the next few days. And I was trying to figure out like, what is this? It was so different from everything. And I know I've said this already like 100 times throughout the series, but really, I had no idea what to do with what I was listening to. I mean, later on, I learned that this is a genre of music called jazz fusion, and it's the fusion of jazz and rock, where you take the jazz musical language and you wrap it in rock attitude, or I don't know, whatever you want to call it. So this language was so alien to me because, I mean, in rock, even though I was listening to prog rock is still, it tends to stay within a certain limit of the musical language, let's say. But this was just like all over the place. It was like you had no key centers and all the chords had alterations, and I was like, what are they doing? But also the musicianship was like unbelievable. Like these guys, it's three, and I think they had four keyboards too, but they played, it was insane what they were doing. So I just got hooked, and I started to like, I have to study this. I have to study what these guys are doing. And that pushed me in a completely different direction in my musical studies, because now I wanted to learn what jazz fusion was all about and start to get into like this kind of harmonies and chord voicings. The guitar player, Scott Henderson, is incredible. So I started to like find lessons from him and study what he was doing, all that stuff. Anyway, I really got into them. But since this was my introduction to jazz fusion, I obviously said like, okay, I need more of this. Who else is doing this kind of music? So I'm gonna show you some of the other artists that I got into. So the first thing is, well, obviously, since we're doing them, I had to get all the tribal tech I could. So I got a lot of tribal tech, and I've been a huge fan ever since. They are a super energetic band. Their music is like amazing. So I have a bunch of their records and I really enjoy them. Then after them, there was this other name that it was very often mentioned with them in guitar magazines. So I also decided to check him out, and it's Frank Gambale. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, so forgive me. But yeah, him, he was always also mentioned in guitar magazines, so I checked him out, and I really like what he was doing. He's a little bit more, his music is more friendly in a way. That's the best way I can put it, than tribal tech. Tribal tech is more aggressive, let's say. But I liked a lot what he does, and his playing is crazy. Like I got a hold of a bunch of lessons from him, and it's insane. Actually, back then, Tribal Tech's guitar player Scott Henderson and Frank Gambale, they were doing a lot of instructional videos with REH. So I got my hands on all of them, and I started to study everything they would put out or say. Oops, hitting the camera. Because I had to learn everything they had. And actually, another funny anecdote is that I talked about in one of my previous episodes about how I really got into deciding I needed to learn music theory, and it was through a series of articles that I've got from Guitar Magazine, which explained guitar modes, basically modal harmony. And I didn't understand them, so I figured like, okay, I need to go study theory. Well, those articles were written by Frank, so I guess thank you, Frank, for forcing me to learn music theory. So who else? This is another musician that his flavor of fusion is different from these two other bands, and it's Meola. So he's an amazing musician, but he borrows elements from more like world music and stuff like that. So you'll find that a lot in his stuff. Especially this record, I absolutely love. It's my favorite. I listened to it I don't know how many times. He has such an amazing tone. The pieces are so rich harmonically. Like, he goes to something I like a lot, which is like, I call it landscaping, which is where the music becomes more of a landscape than just like a linear piece of music. This is something that I find in certain artists and I really like. So he's really worth checking out. He's got this other record where he plays with two other giants. It's Aldi Meola, John McLaughlin, and Paco de Lucia, and then play more like flamenco stuff. I really love it. I don't have a lot of like actual jazz fusion CDs because it's not a genre that I bought a lot of music for, but I have to have these two honorable mentions because these two artists are absolutely completely different from everything I've heard in the jazz fusion genre or anything else for that matter. The first one is a giant of giants, Allan Holdsworth. He's an absolute monster of a guitar player and musician. I had the great fortune of being in a clinic with him here years ago. He came to town and I was like, you have to be there. You can't. It's Allan Holdsworth. Come on. And he did like this guitar clinic in a little music store. It was amazing. He's such a nice person, but his music is out of this world. I've talked with jazz people, like actual professional, long time career jazz musicians, and I've told them, I don't know why, but I'm not a jazz educated musician myself. I don't have that formation in me. I can understand the language. When I hear a jazz piece, I can understand what's going on and why it's going where it's going, but it's not my core of what I've learned. So I've told people, like, I can understand a lot of jazz. I can say like, oh yeah, even though I may not be able to play the chords outright, but I understand it. But I told them, like, except him, I don't understand what he's doing. I have no idea. I listen to it and I'm like, what is this? And they've told me, like, oh, don't worry, nobody understands Allan Holdsworth. Not even even jazz people are like, I don't know what he's doing. So like, oh, okay, sigh of relief. Anyway, so he's an amazing musician, but I would say listen to him and then make up your own mind on what you think of his music. And the second one is this artist. This is borderline, if not full-on, like experimental jazz, but experimental in an incredibly interesting way. Like, I bought this record. His name is David Thorne, and I bought this record because of one song that I heard. I don't remember where I heard this. I just happened to stumble onto it, completely random, but it caught my ear. Like, what is this? It was so good. And he uses a lot of like electronic music production stuff, at least in this record, and editing in his songs. It was just like crazy. So I went out and I found which record the song was in. I bought the record and I listened to it and I was like, it kind of showed me that creativity can be pushed in directions that you might have not normally thought of. And it's something that I've tried to keep in my music ever since. Like, I try to not do things that I'm already familiar with. And even if I'm doing something that is familiar to me, I'll try to find at least one element that is in there that I can push a little bit into a place where I've never been. And that will make your music feel more fresh to, in this case, to me, because it's me who's doing it. So that's something that I try to do every time when I'm working on something. But anyway, this is it. This was my introduction to jazz fusion. And even though I'm not listening to this as actively as I was before, it's still something that I go to sometimes for a refresher. and a style of music that I find very rich. And there's a lot of great musicians and bands doing this kind of music. Even today, I still find people like Sungazer and other bands that I like to listen to because they have really unique takes on this style of music. Fortunately, here we have one of the biggest jazz festivals in the world. So I go there every year for 2 weeks nonstop. I'm there on every show that I can, just absorbing as much as I can. And that's it. I'm gonna leave it at this because we're already like shaving off the time limit. And next week, I'll tell you more about other music genres that I got into because of all this parallel growing in music stuff. Just parallel to my rock and metal stuff. So yeah, we'll talk about that next week. In the meantime, take care and see you later. Bye.